Welcome to the On Humans podcast. This is your host, Ilari. I am taking some time off for the holidays, and so instead of new episodes, I will be publishing short highlights from previous ones. This one is from episode 2, where I discussed secular humanism and religion with Professor Philip Kitcher from Columbia University. Given the secularization but remaining importance of the Christmas period for many people, I thought this would be a topical way to start the highlight series. I hope that you enjoy. Happy holidays. Professor Kitcher, you're a secular humanist. You've identified as such. You've written about secular humanism. What is secular humanism for you?
Secular humanism is an attempt to understand ourselves and understand the value of being human and understand the human project without thinking in religious terms. It's to try to not simply to deny what religious teachings say, not simply to be an atheist, a naysayer, but to provide the kind of positive vision that religions at their best provide. So there's a sense in which secular humanism respects things in religion. It doesn't follow the path of the new atheists, people like Richard Dawkins and Dan Dennett and others who really want to sweep religion away as noxious trash. It has to be got rid of as quickly as possible. The secular humanist says, look, religion can have great value, can also do great harm, but at its best, it gives people a view by which to live. It enriches their lives in various ways. And the secular humanist is somebody who finds alternative, non-religious ways to do the same kind of thing. So the challenge for a secular humanist is to develop a worldview that gives a place to values, gives a place to morality, gives a place to ethics, and gives a place for meaning in life. And that's the kind of secular humanist I want to be. And you may not know of my most recent attempt to tangle with these issues. It occurs in my book on education, where I talk about religious education, which I see the secular humanist not just as able to ally with people of, who think that religion is something non-literal, that it's something that talks about some transcendent aspect of life, but actually with a broader class of religious believers, with anybody who accepts what I think of as Kant's fundamental insight, which is the priority of value over religion, that you cannot see religion as the source of ethical or moral values, or indeed of any such values. Since, as Kant puts it so beautifully, in order to recognize the Holy One of Israel, I must already have a conception of what is right and wrong. I must already have a moral sense. And that's exactly correct, it seems to me. That if you think, well, the deity has to be obeyed, whatever he tells us, you're in the position of the Nazi commandant who, as it were, follows the instructions that come down from the Führer or the Führer's deputies to run the camp. Well, the Führer is more powerful than I was, and sees further than I do. And so that lets you off the hook? No, it doesn't let you off the hook. We all know it. Now, there are lots of religious believers who hold to Kant's insight, who realize full and well that whatever the Bible says, they shouldn't go around, slaying their neighbors and smiting them and collecting the foreskins and all that, and rounding up the nubile young women and so on and so forth. And equally that they shouldn't love their neighbors, because by doing so they will heap coals of fire on the heads of their enemies. I mean, that's they know that. They think that the doctrines of their religion are uniquely correct and that the doctrines of a rival religion are not correct. I think they're completely wrong about that. I think everybody has it wrong unless they go completely non-literalist about it. But I can make an alliance with people who accept Kant's insight. because we can, as it were, limit the role of religion where it hurts most, which is when religion is wheeled into an important moral debate as a conversation stopper, as something that, as it were, shuts things off and declares that what comes out of a text has to be the law or the moral or imperative or whatever. So my views have evolved a little bit, and I now no longer see the secular humanist as, like the runner who's finished the race and gotten to the end and sees, the really enlightened religious believers who are completely ecumenical. We're all trying to chart the transcendent realm. And the Buddhists do it differently from the Hindus, who do it differently from the Jews and the Christians and the Muslims, but we're all basically on the same page. And this person is approaching the tape, and the secular humanist is standing there saying, come on, you're so close. You almost got it. You almost got it right. I no longer take that attitude, which was the attitude of my lectures on secular humanism, life after faith. It seems to me that's arrogant. I think that secular humanism and religion actually can co-evolve with one another. I think there are some things that religion can learn from secular humanism, but I also think that secular humanism can learn a lot from various forms of religion. So I think there should be a more humble alliance between what we might think of as the moderate middle, the ecumenical Christians who are prepared to accept Kant's insight, their counterparts among Jews, Muslims, Buddhists, Hindus, and so forth. We are different from literalist fundamentalists for whom, the Bible says it and that settles it. Or on the other hand, the militant atheists who think that this is just rubbish. We don't need these worldviews. We don't need ethics is just a delusion anyway. We're all selfish, etc., etc., etc. Both of these extreme positions, I think, bad, and they're bad for the polity. And I'd like to see a big alliance of the middle. So I'm getting to be a more sympathetic and warmer and fuzzier secular humanist.
You mentioned Dan Dennett earlier as an example of the more religion is trash camp, and that is certainly the view that is easy to have of him. But I bumped into something really interesting. Very recently, Dennett had an interview with the great physicist Sean Carroll from Caltech, and I was really surprised at what he said. If you don't mind, I'm gonna just read a few lines from their discussion. So Dennett says that he's gonna quote a line from Robert Frost. Robert Frost says that home is where, when you have to go there, they have to take you in. Now, in that sense, there's a lot of people that are homeless and don't trust the state to take care of them. One of the things that religions have done over the decades, over the millennia, is taken in and provided a sense of meaning and love for people who otherwise would not have that. This is a life-healing, life-protecting, life-improving feature of the world that we don't want to throw away. The question is, how do you save it without also saving the sort of brute irrationality and irrationality, the valorization of unreason and superstition? I think it's possible to domesticate religions a little further. They've been domesticated a lot, but I think we can go a little further and keep the ceremony, keep the community, keep music and art and celebration intact, and leave out the myths. I was quite surprised by this.
I'm very surprised, since Dan actually wrote for a volume about me, and we had one of our usual disagreements about this. He once gave me a nice title. He appointed me the Pope of the I'm an Atheist But movement, and so I feel that sort of the disagreement between us always has been like that between the Bolsheviks and the Mensheviks. That I'm more sympathetic, more understanding of bits and pieces of religion than he is. But it sounds as though he's coming in my direction. This is an unusual trend, I think, but I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it before, so I'm delighted.
Yes.
I'm delighted to know this.
Well, speaking of Bolsheviks, Marx's famous line about religion is that religion is opium for the people. Now, you make a great observation. I think it was in Life After Darwin, that Marx was not talking about opium, religion being opium, only as a recreational drug, but also as a medicinal drug.
That's right. It's the point that Dan just made about taking people in. I mean, the poor and the distressed and the humiliated and the outcast need help. They need something to help them. And I think that Marx was just saying that's medicine. It's medicine that can, as it were, dull the edge of pain. And Dan was actually appreciating in the lines you just read.
Well, there is a lot of research on health effects of religion, on reduced mortality just from attending religious sermons once a week. There's research on people being drawn towards religions when they feel unsafe. So if we imagine a world where we have moved, whether we want or not, let's say that the world has moved beyond religion for one reason or another, what will be the medicinal drug that will replace religion? Will it be, I mean, I coming from Finland, of course, I appreciate that the state can do many things that it doesn't do in other countries, but I don't necessarily, also coming from Finland, wouldn't say that this Nordic welfare state is all that people need and then they can have a happy life
Yeah.
ever after.
Yeah. This goes back to what I was saying about the coevolution of religion and secular humanism. I think that secular humanists need to provide proper, responsive community measures, institutions that will do the things that religion has done for people, especially for those who suffer. I mean, I've said to Dan many, many times in conversations and even in sort of public fora, if you wander up into Harlem, just I wander up sort of 10 blocks from where I live, and you see all these little storefront churches and meeting places. They're doing a lot of good. Riverside Church, just up the street, is doing a lot of good. There are lots of places near where I live that are really taking the edge off people's lives. Now, I have also been to meetings at places like the Society for Ethical Culture, which are conceived as doing the same kind of thing. And they try terribly hard, but it doesn't work as well. It's not as effective. And we have to learn that. I mean, there are people in various parts of the world. I know there's a humanist university in Holland, in Utrecht, where they do fabulous work at trying to help train humanist chaplains who will go out and do the pastoral care and the pastoral work that, rabbis and Christian pastors and, Muslim leaders have tried to do, and in the Abrahamic religions and so on and so forth. And it's very, very difficult. I mean, in a certain sense, the Abrahamic religions have had many, many centuries of experimenting with this kind of institutional framework. They have a lot to teach those of us who are just starting out. And, we have to learn that. It's very important that we learn that because these are important things. And I sensed in what you read that Dan was starting to acknowledge that. I think that he and Dawkins and Hitchens and Sam Harris, I think that they think that believing what is truly false or from their point of view absurd is the worst thing that can ever happen to a person. It isn't. There are far worse things that can happen. Some of these false things and and even reasoning in ways that Dan would call irrational or unreasonable or crazy, if that actually mitigates all of the things that the hostile world throws at you and makes it possible for you to live and for you to contribute to the lives of people you love, those false beliefs are worth having. The challenge is to substitute for those false beliefs things that can be, as it were, epistemically more benign, but still have the same kind of practical effects. And we don't know how to do that yet. That's the secular humanist project to work on.
Professor Kitcher, based on your research, based on your worldview, what kind of animals are we?
Well, I'm actually in the process of writing a book that has a title that sort of speaks to that question. I think we shouldn't call ourselves Homo sapiens. We're not wise. I don't think we should even call ourselves Homo cognoscens. We're not knowing. I think we should call ourselves Homo quaerens. We're the animal that inquires. And learning how to do that better is, I think, the heart of philosophy as I understand it. Learning how to do it with respect to value issues and all of the other domains in which inquiries are needed. So, Homo quaerens.
Philip Kitcher, thank you very much.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed this interview.